So, Jamie, you're going to tell us all about the genetic sequencing of coral work you've been doing over the last couple of weeks. This genetic research obviously is being taken on by Horniman in partnership with the Singapore government and the Australian government, or is it Keynes Marine, or
No,
who are the players here?
So it's basically the grant has come via my director of studies from Derby University. So and we've got the grant about £40,000, and all of that is basically paying for the metabolomic sequencing. So Birmingham University, which is in central UK, they're doing all the metabolomic sequencing for us. So it's those three: the Horniman, Derby, and Birmingham.
Gotcha. And the coral, in terms of the coral reefs that you're actually studying, that's just you just have collection permits then, or how does that work with the local areas?
I mean, we're just using the broodstock that we've got already. So the Australian broodstock came via Cairns Marine. So we've got all the CITES permits for them. And then the Singapore broodstock we collected. So we actually went to the Singapore government and got all the permits that were required for us to go and collect. And that was back in 2015. So we're kind of using the stuff that you've seen here, but for multiple experiments. That's the idea.
Very cool.
Yeah, so we ran a project, or a pilot project, just before Christmas in November, where we were taking samples from some of our corals from our research systems. So we have Australian research systems and also Singapore research systems. So they focus on those two geographical locations. We've got corals from those locations. So this initial pilot study was looking at a Cropra mediapora and a Cropra hyacinthus. And so we have hyacinthus from Singapore, and we have hyacinthus from Australia, and we also have mediapora from Australia. So the initial pilot study was taking small fragments and looking at whether there's a difference in the metabolites within individuals of the same species, but also differences between species, and looking to see whether there's a difference between the apical polyp, so the one at the tip of the acropora, and then radial polyps around the side. So at the moment, it's sort of a scattergun approach. We have no idea what we're going to find. I'm sure it'll be way more complicated than we imagine. But that initial sort of pilot is to look at that, and then go into sort of phase 2, which is then start looking at selectively breeding individual genotypes from both Australia and Singapore, and creating hybrids in essence.
Awesome.
When we take these fragments, they're only small, like tiny amounts of tissue that's needed. They then get very quickly snap frozen in liquid nitrogen. So there's lots and lots of PPE that's needed. You know, it's nearly 200 degrees minus. It then gets put into a cryo vial, snapped onto a little stick, and then lowered down into the liquid nitrogen, which basically snap freezes it in that moment in time. So they're now, once they've stored at minus 200 degrees Celsius, they've then been transported up to Birmingham University, where they're sitting in cold storage, waiting to be processed now. And just as long as that cold storage is kept, then they'll stay in perpetuity, you know, snap frozen in that moment of time. Some of the colonies were gravid, some of them weren't gravid. So we did this in November, and then we followed them spawning in December. So what we're initially trying to look at is whether there's differences between individuals. What we may find is different metabolite sort of signatures based on ones that are gravid versus non-gravid, and gravid is basically carrying eggs. Mm-hmm. So we don't know whether we're going to see that yet, but it's something that we'll be keeping an eye out to try and cross-reference you know, that knowledge, which ones are full of eggs and which ones aren't.
You're at the massive observation stage of science. You're just going to see what's going on there. And then, you know, when we see something interesting, we're going to dive into that and take a closer look. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be all over the place trying to make some sort of pattern out what we're seeing. But yeah, like I say, it's just an initial exploratory experiment to start with.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Jamie, and we'll catch you next time.
Talk
Hopefully
soon,
not
yeah.
a fire alarm.
Cheers.